and welcome to another episode of Immigration and Mobility Decoded. It's my honor and my pleasure to welcome today's guests, Florabel Bautista and Philipp von Zitzewitz, both from Sassam Immigration. Philipp and Florabel, thank you so much for hopping on the show today.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure. We look forward to being part of the show.
Yeah, very excited, Eric. Thank you so much.
Just want to catch up really quickly with the both of you. This is actually the second time we are recording. We are recording this in early April of 24. I believe the first time we recorded was July or August of 23, but we ran into some technical difficulties. And then we were rescheduling. So I'm very excited we're finally able to record and talk more about UAE immigration and some of the various visa pathways that the companies can utilize. But before we hop into that, Florabel, how's it going? It's early spring, early April. How are things going with you?
Great. I hope there's a spring in the UAE, but it's only summer and winter. So now we're approaching summer. The weather is still good. You can still feel the morning breeze. It's still okay to walk around.
Nice. Philipp, how are things going with you?
Yeah, really well. Thank you, Eric. So things have been fine. And in fact, we're just a slight bit before the Eid break. So we had a couple of busy days behind us, but we look forward to taking a break now. So it's a very convenient and comfortable time because the government is taking off as well the entire next week. And we have the pleasure to follow suit and also take a short break.
Very nice, very nice. And both of you currently live in Dubai, is that correct?
Yes,
That's correct. Yes.
I guess maybe Florabel, we'll start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit more about living in Dubai, and I guess your journey to working and living in the city that is in the UAE?
Yeah, basically I like Dubai. I have come to love this country. It's very safe to be here. You can walk any time of the day, night without any difficulties or trouble. So it's pretty safe for everybody to live in the city. Also, my workplace and my residence is not very far. It's only like 10 minutes drive away. So it's also very convenient. And then when it comes to convenience store and etc., it's just around the corner. So it's pretty much comfortable to be here.
And Philipp, can you talk about a little bit more about your journey, how you came to live and work in Dubai?
Well, I came back in 2006 to Dubai from my home country, Germany. And like many other people in the UAE, I had two suitcases with me, and I thought, okay, let's see what this country can offer and what I can do over here. And I've come to love it. I've grown into the country just like I've grown into the company at the same time. I've met my wife over here. I've built a family over here. So Dubai is really my second home. It's come to be my home base really, and I'm enjoying life and the vibes of the city. So Dubai is a cosmopolitan city in every sense, with a lot going on, with a lot of trends always shaking up the environment, and it's a great mix of nationalities over here. We enjoy that a lot. So we are the country with 90% of expats really. So locals are the minority, while expats are the majority. And since all expatriates really, every nationality is represented over here, it's a wonderful mix, and it's a great environment to live in.
Yeah, I think that's really a really interesting thing that you just mentioned. The country is a majority expats. And so, Philipp, I'm curious, how has the UAE over the years positioned itself as this popular location for expats and for foreign workers? What steps did the country take to put itself in this position?
Well, Dubai did a fantastic, or the UAE itself did a fantastic job in marketing themselves to the world. And I think it came about by offering opportunities really to everyone, and especially on the commercial side to companies. So in the early 2000s, Dubai made particular efforts to promote the location of Dubai to the top Fortune 500 companies all around the globe, and they were very successful in attracting them and bringing them over here. So there are a lot of incentives given for operating out of the UAE, and that has maybe sparked a trend of. And at the same time, the country follows every important latest trend, and it continues to show itself as a very interesting country to the rest of the world. And it really made great efforts in appearing on the map of the world in the 2000s, I believe. And until this day, it's become not an immigrant city. You wouldn't say that like in the US, but every larger corporation and every business person is very much attracted to the UAE, and opportunities are there to make a good living over here to many. And there is this impression that they have really championed in generating the impression of a country, like Florabel said, of safety and stability and of opportunity.
Philip, that's really interesting to hear. Quick follow up. I'm curious. So you mentioned that. I guess what was the country? What were the country's immigration policies like prior to the 2000s?
Well, actually, they haven't changed so much. So the basic concept was always that a company needs to sponsor their employees and basically take responsibility and control over employees. And in order to live here and obtain a work permit and a residency permit, you need to have a work contract with an employer. And this has been the model forward, and it's still the ruling one until today. That we've seen modifications of it to a certain degree with different types of visas coming up, and they affect the length of a visa. But in general, this is the concept always. So to be able to live and work in this country, you need to be associated to an employer and have a related work contract.
Florabel, Philip mentioned that the country offers incentives and provides those pitches to attract the Fortune 500 companies of all sizes. What are some popular industries attracting companies to the UAE?
Oh, yeah. So there are a lot. I think most of the industries are also in the UAE, specifically in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So there are, of course, oil and gas company, construction companies, real estate, hotel and hospitality industry, logistics and transportation, of course, financial services, healthcare industries also, and pharmaceuticals are also very popular here in the UAE. Retail industry is also here, of course, and then FMCG, that's one of our biggest clients. And of course, fintech and crypto and IT are just booming in the country.
And how are companies, Florabel, typically, I guess maybe tapping into or utilizing the offices in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or elsewhere in the UAE? Does it just help them expand their time zone coverage, offer more coverage to their clients or user base? I'm just curious to kind of understand how global companies operate.
Global companies operate here. Of course, they would have to set up their entity in Dubai, either as a branch office or an independent entity as a subsidiary company. They will have to choose if they would like to set up their office in the mainland or in the free zone. In terms of free zones, there are so many free zones that they can choose from, but that will all be dependent on what kind of business activities they would like to operate. So that's the kind of options that they would have to choose when thinking of setting up an office in the UAE. First, of course, whether their business is more convenient on the mainland sector or in the free zone sector.
Can you dive into the free zones and offer a little bit more context, maybe for viewers who are unfamiliar with the free zones versus the mainland?
Yeah, so in free zones, meaning to say the company can set up, foreign companies can set up their entity in the UAE by owning it 100%. So the ownership is 100%, either by a corporate company or an individual. So that's a free zone kind of setup. On the mainland, depending on the business activity that they will conduct. So there is still a regulation of having a local partner, Emirati partner on the license. So meaning to say, if they would like to set up, for instance, a manufacturing company on the mainland, they will also have to look into a partnership with either a local company, which is owned by an Emirati national, or an individual who will be part of the licensing process, meaning to say there will be a shares of percentage on the license as part of the shareholding of the company on the mainland. So that's the main difference when it comes to mainland and free zones.
Got it. No, that's a really interesting breakdown. Really appreciate it. So Philip, we just learned a little bit about the free zones versus the mainland. I'm curious if you can discuss in a little bit more detail the specific visa pathways or routes that workers can actually, with their employers, that they can actually utilize. I'm based in the States, and I'm sure you and Florabel know, some of our popular work visas are the H-1B, the L-1 visa, the TN visa. But I'm curious, what are the UAE's equivalents to some of these?
So our equivalent would be the work permit that I mentioned, as that you apply through a company sponsored under a company. So work authorization through a company. There are also opportunities to apply for a visa as a freelancer, as well as concepts for remote work visas, which also ties you, however, to an employer. So which would require an international employer to be available to be able to apply for that visa. Those are some of the roads. So typically, the majority of people and employees here at some point, they arrive in the country on a tourist visa. They would look around, they would familiarize themselves with the area, and they would apply for locally for jobs. And if they are successful, they would find work authorization and an employment contract through their future employers. In the past, really, the typical model was that the local market did not have so much talent, and the majority of employers would recruit talent from outside the country. So in those cases, entry permits would have to be applied through the employer. So that was the traditional route, but nowadays many people find their ways into the UAE by themselves. And given the incentives now for investing capital into the country as well, there are also opportunities for businessmen and investors to come to the country. So if you bring a sufficient enough amount of money, or actually invest into the country, be it through a company or into real estate, for example, you are also entitled for related visas that way. So there's the traditional approach as an employer to come into the country, and then there's that of an investor to invest your money and then be able to obtain a visa from that activity.
You mentioned a freelancer visa, and that kind of caught my attention really quick. Can you just elaborate on that one a little bit more? So are you saying that like someone who isn't tied to an employer but does work on contract-based work, I guess, like they can live and work in Dubai on a freelancer visa?
Well, they can obtain the visa, and they basically they are self-employed. So they can apply for a related license, which they are accountable for and that they need to finance. And then they can sell their services to anyone else in the UAE to make a living. And this kind of visa is available in various free zones to obtain. So in the free zones, as Florabel mentioned, they have different themes, and they attract different industries as well. So according to the industry, if you do certain self-employed work in a particular industry, you can choose a related free zone in the UAE and then set up as a freelancer. which requires you then to invest basically in yourself, because there is some cost related, of course, to that license. So you will obtain a license first, giving you the status of a freelancer, and then this license will grant you the related visa.
That's very cool. That's very cool. It, just as you're saying it, and it seems like it's a very unique and helpful pathway or visa to have in the country. And just like as you're talking about, I'm just comparing it to the U.S. and I feel like I've read a few studies from U.S. based institutions talking about the need for this, this type of visa that maybe foreign nationals coming into the US so they're not tied always to an employer. So it's an interesting compare and contrast of how the countries, and the pathways that they might offer. Florabel, next question for you as a follow-up and building on what Philip just said. Is it possible for an individual to be on maybe one visa type in the UAE and move to another? So I guess in this instance, in keeping with the freelancer theme, if someone is on the freelancer visa, can they move to a different work permit?
Basically, no, because in the UAE, you cannot have two visas at the same time. But as a freelancer, you can work for multiple employers or clients, basically, because you own your visa, so you are eligible to work for multiple clients. But for some clients, they might require the freelancer to have a work permit. So it depends on the client's requirement. And also it depends on where the client's location is. For instance, if they're in the mainland and they would like the freelancer to be on a payroll, then the freelancer will have to have a separate work permit issued from the labor more, which is also technically known as a labor office. For other free zones, for instance, there's a bit of leniency that you can make an internal contract with some companies and work for them as a freelancer. So there's a bit of fluidity when you have a freelance visa. At the same time, I mean, one of the advantages also of having a freelance visa is that you can sponsor your dependents. So if you are married, you have your wife, you have your children, you can also sponsor them a dependent visa with the same validity as yours. For instance, freelance visa, you will have a 2-year visa. So the same visa validity can be extended to your family members. So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Appreciate the breakdown. What type of visa options or work permits Florabel, do you find that the Fortune 500 companies typically utilize in order to bring their workers into Dubai?
It's still the typical employment visa because of the payroll process, especially if the company is on the mainland, then it is mandatory that the employee will have to be paid locally. So they need to be sponsored by the company. The same process is also in the free zone, where typical employment visa is also utilized by most companies because of some free zones, and specifically in Jebel Ali. Then it's one of the free zones who is following a wages protection system where employees must be paid locally. So in that sense, the best route for them to employ an individual is to have them on a sponsored employment visa. For some clients whose employees would like just to work in the UAE, but to maintain their payroll and services overseas. We have several clients who opted for a remote work visa, so that's also possible. So the employment is tied to the head office, but the employee works and live in the UAE. So that's basically the remote work visa. And the concept is this visa is valid for 1 year. And the same thing, if the foreign national would like to bring his family members, so the same visible validity can be extended to family members. Yeah.
Has the country always had a remote work visa, or was this created in response to post-pandemic lifestyle and allowing individuals to kind of that flexibility to work wherever?
No, it was only created recently. I think, yeah, post pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of the initiatives of the UAE government to attract foreign nationals to live and work in the UAE.
Got it. Yeah, we've heard a lot about remote work visas and how countries are creating them in order to attract more workers or more individuals to come and work in their respective countries. Um, Offering a little sneak peek, but we're creating a immigration trends report, and that is one of the questions that will be discussed is if organizations allow for remote work. So I guess Florabel, final question for you, and then Philip, I'll jump back to you. Is for countries looking at, or sorry, not countries, Florabel, for organizations looking at the various visa options, what are your general best practices and insights you can offer to them to just look at their options and determine which ones make the most sense for their company?
In the UAE, there's only very limited visa options compared to other countries. And besides, there is no permanent residency in the UAE, right? So ultimately, it's still the number one visa option that we always recommend, especially if the foreign national is going to stay here in the UAE for like 3 months, 6 months or more, then the best option is to be on an employment visa. So, because there's more flexibility if you are on an unemployment visa, especially when you are planning to travel back and forth and traveling within the GCC region, then it makes more sense that the employee is on an employment visa.
Gotcha. Philip, there is also the UAE also has something called the Golden Visa. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's as well like a novelty that we have since right after the pandemic about. So the golden visa allows people to have a length of visa of stay in the country up to 10 years, while the traditional visa allows a 2 year period. And the golden visa really was introduced to retain talent in the market and to give people an opportunity to be here on a longer term basis. And it favors initially talent such as doctors, highly educated people, as well as business owners and leaders in economy. And it's now become more available in the market. And so there's a connection to education, to capacity, really behind it. But then there's also the element of investment. So a lot of people buying property in the UAE are entitled for a golden visa. So in fact, if you invest more than 2 million dirhams into a property over here, you are entitled to the same kind of visa. So it's a it's a new form that we're seeing really to give people an opportunity to stay longer in the country and to have a bit of a perspective in the country as well.
Well, when you're working with either the individuals on the Golden Visa or the organizations using it, do you find that who's typically using them? You mentioned doctors, education, but I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on maybe specific industries that tap into the Golden Visa.
Yeah, so if we look at our clients, they often favor management positions, and because there's a certain cost also related to applying for a golden visa. And some of our clients, they offer to pay these costs to their top management. So that's a trend we're seeing, that the higher management often gets this as a sort of benefit. And with the backing of the company, there's an easier process to apply for this visa. So we receive a lot of requests from our clients, from top management to apply for the golden visa. And apart from that, there is of course also the initiative from employees themselves. So the advantage of the golden visa is that it allows you a certain kind of freedom in the country. So you're able to change employers as well, much more easier. So the application process for someone who is not yet on a visa is a longer and more tedious one. While if you're on a golden visa, you're actually able to job hop a lot easier. You can leave one company and join another one, and you just have a few formalities left to do that. So there is there's a sense of ownership, freedom that comes along with that visa. That's why it's very much favored by many nationalities that don't necessarily receive an on-arrival visa in the UAE. So obtaining this kind of visa gives you a bit of a status and privilege. And that's why companies use that element to incentivize their top management by offering this.
Given it's sounds like it's a pretty popular visa for those who are able to use it. Do you foresee the government maybe expanding the pool of people that can use the golden visa in the near to long term future?
Well, you're more into that topic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they are not only expanding, but they are really encouraging everybody in the UAE to apply. Okay, guys, please apply for a golden visa. In the beginning, the threshold was 50,000 dirhams for you to be eligible to apply for a golden visa. But then they changed it radically to 30,000 dirhams. So any manager, employee, any employees who's on a manager level, manager meaning to say the word manager must be on your residence visa. Any type of manager, as long as there is a word manager on your visa and you are earning a salary of 30,000 dirhams per month, then you will be qualified to apply for a golden visa, as long as your university degree certificate is also fully legalized for use in the UAE. So that's one thing for those employed in the UAE. For property owners, previously, you can apply only for a property golden visa if you've paid your property fully. It's fully paid for a value of 2 million. However, they changed it. The Dubai Land Department also scrapped that regulation. As long as you purchase a property worth 2 million dirhams, even if you have not yet paid half of it, you can already apply for a property golden visa. So your visa will read as property owner. The validity is also 10 years, and the same validity can be extended to your family members. The good thing about golden visa is also advantageous if you have a male dependent, meaning you have a son who is connected to your visa. The challenge in the UAE is that if you have a son and your son is like 21 years old, the visa sponsorship is a bit challenging because it goes to a humanitarian case committee for approval if you still would like to continue sponsorship to your son who is already a 21-year-old. But now, if you have a golden visa for parents, especially if you have a golden visa and you would like to extend sponsorship to your son who is not married and he is like above 21 years old, we recently received an approval also that he's already like 30 years old, but he's not married. So the sponsorship can still be extended to your son. So that's the difference in the UAE when you have a son and daughter sponsorship. For daughter, as long as your daughter is not married, regardless of age, your visa or the visa of your daughter can be dependent to your parents. So, but for male dependent, there's a limitation of age. But if you're a golden visa holder, that doesn't apply. So that's the one of the advantages of having a golden visa, and there's also no restriction for them to be out of the UAE. In a typical scenario for a regular employment visa holder, you cannot be out of the UAE for more than 180 days or 6 months. But if you have a golden visa, you can stay out of the UAE for as long as you want and then come back in, you still have your golden visa.
That's a pretty cool benefit.
Yeah, so that's why there's definitely a trend towards this, like Florabel explains, that the government is driving this further. And there's also another visa in the pipeline which is yet to be introduced, which basically allows the same privileges, but is only valid for 5 years. But 5 years again being a lot more than the traditional 2. So this is the path the government is taking over here, and all with the intention of retaining talent in the market and giving people an opportunity to be longer in the country with more freedom.
So I guess, Philip, what do you think that says about the government's ambitions? Or what's your take on them with the making these changes, introducing new visas, and their goal of retaining talent? What do you think that says in the bigger picture?
Well, the UAE have definitely understood that a mixed market of talent is an important one. And the UAE are right in the center now of the GCC countries, the neighboring countries. And there is definitely competition going on between the countries. And then there is companies will follow the availability of talent. And with the UAE always taking the front position really when it comes to the development of the market and being a top competitor here, the visa scheme really underlines these intentions and efforts. And so far it has served them very well. And we can see that the neighboring countries are starting to look into similar options. But I think the UAE always have an edge and have that head start ahead. And I think this policy making of visas, golden visas, green visas, that's the 5-year one, and opportunities for freelance visas and the remote work visas, they really underline this trend and this understanding that the future is defined by the talent in the market.
Yeah. Very quickly, you mentioned the GCC, and for those who maybe are watching or listening, that stands for the Gulf Cooperation Council. Philip, can you provide a very quick overview of this union and the immigration benefits?
Yeah, so there's a union which relates to trade and the import and export of goods, really. So the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, comprises the 6 member states of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Qatar, and Bahrain. And when it comes to immigration, they all have similar concepts, really. So there's the same employment-related visa concepts that apply in the other countries, but they don't move as fast and they're not as easy to allow visa access as the UAE really do. Now the union was intended for trading opportunities, so moving of goods. But there's a vision definitely for having a unified tourist visa, for example. So the region is bound, the union is bound to closer collaborate and share tourism, for example. But they don't really share the immigration policies as of now. So the tourist visa is in the making. But so far, the union really covers the moving of goods and the intention of setting up VAT taxes in the same way, even though they also differ a little bit. So even though there is a union, they are still relatively independent and operating individually within the union.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, I do want to be aware of time. It is still the work day for all of us, and I know there's some end of week meetings coming up. So in these last few minutes, I just wanted to ask both of you, just for some general best practices, insights, etc., for companies who are maybe looking to set up an office in the UAE, starting at the very bottom. So Florabel, I'll start with you. Say I run a company and I'm looking to expand into the UAE. What are some things I need to know right away?
Well, there are many things, many things that they would need to know or you would need to know right away. First is location factor, business activities, where to set up your license, who will be the shareholders, managers. You'll have to mentally calculate who will be the appointed managers, who will be the shareholders, and then of course your planning staff. How many employees would I plan to bring to the UAE? What are the requirements? Basically, if your foreign national is single, then it's pretty easy. Only legalized university degree certificate will have to be prepared, apart from other supporting documents from the company and then from the employee. But the most part that takes so much time is the degree legalization. If the foreign national is married, then they'll have to consider legalizing the marriage certificate. If they have children, then the birth certificate of each child will have also to be legalized, all for use in the UAE. And then any document that is not in English or in Arabic, it must be translated in either Arabic or English. So basically, English is widely accepted in the UAE. But if the office or the license will be set up on the mainland, some documents will need to be translated into Arabic. That is a requirement by the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization. I hope I said it right, more in short. So yeah, so basically that's the like an overview.
Philip, anything to add, or any other best practices, insights for companies, just looking to start to open an office in the UAE?
Yeah, the only insight is it takes a little bit longer than people anticipate because the UAE paint this wonderful image of a digital economy and with superb infrastructure, which is true in every way, but the application takes a little bit longer. And sometimes companies setting up believe that it is easier because the UAE do require you to make certain down payments or investments. So bank accounts are easier opened once this all happens. So companies need to be prepared that it could take 2 to 3 months really for a setup. Companies can also be aware there if you're operating in the mainland, there's an Emiratization program, certain rules to be followed. It is wise to be familiar with the UAE labor law for then starting to hiring employees. So there's a little bit of homework to be done when setting up, but overall there's this fantastic opportunity of the UAE being positioned right here between Africa, Asia, and Europe, really, where they reach out to people within a 6 hours flight. You have millions of people to target in the markets around us. So there's this wonderful opportunity, and once companies are ready to grasp that, they just have to choose their setup location. And because we have so many different free zones here with different headings under them, different industries, they should just choose wisely. So it can be as diverse as Florabel mentioned. We have a flower free trade zone, so for people into that kind of area, up to financial industries and crypto. So everything is here, but you just need to choose your heading and your location very well before coming.
Yeah, that's a very cool point you brought up about the travel distances. I guess you have access to almost everything: Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa. How long's a typical flight from the UAE to Germany?
That would be a 6 hour flight. So you reach Frankfurt, Berlin in 6 hours, London in 7 hours. So you reach all the way over to Europe in the west, and to the east. 7 hours gets you how far? That would be Vietnam, Florida. How far do we get in 6 hours to the east? That's almost Philippines.
9 hours. It's 9 hours.
Nice.
I'm far.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, appreciate, I guess, next question for the both of you. For maybe viewers or listeners who are listening and looking to set up shop in the UAE, who should they reach out to learn more?
Well, of course, we're happy to be a first point of contact. So we have a number of clients that we've assisted a number of clients in setting up as well. Even though for the nitty gritty, of course, we don't offer legal advice, and we recommend using law firms for that. But once the destination is clear, a company like ours can facilitate the setup very fast, and then also continue to take care of the related work visas and compliance requirements that they have for their employee force going forward.
Well said. Final question for both of you, and I'm going to ask you both to kind of pull out your crystal ball and maybe offer a prediction of the future. Florabel, I'll start with you. Where do you see UAE immigration policies in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it will be, I believe it will be continuously evolving, improving, expanding, because the UAE government is keen into bringing the 2030 vision, and one of those visions would be impacting the immigration processes where everything will be more digital, or it is already digital right now, but maybe more, and perhaps a connection to other GCC countries, because we also observe like for Saudi Arabia, they are also kind of not yet so much, but kind of following the footsteps of the UAE. So there might be a big connection in the next few years.
Philip, what are your predictions?
Yeah, I think very much in line with this. And we mentioned the joint tourist visa. So there will be more efforts for the region to collaborate more and definitely also to play a bigger role on the global stage, potentially with politics as well. Neighboring Saudi Arabia is a very strong player and they're very close ties with the UAE. And those two countries will play a certain role together. This will affect immigration policies. This will affect opportunities for companies to set up. And the region continues to embrace really every modern trend possible. So we're going to be seeing a lot coming from this region and seeing it becoming more and more of a hub for technology and for trends and for a pacemaker for the world, really.
Sounds lovely. Appreciate the predictions. Well, Philip and Florabel, with that, we'll wrap things up for today. Really appreciate the time. Really excited, and it's been a pleasure to record with both of you today, especially after the last technical difficulties we experienced in the last time we tried to record. So really appreciate the time today. Hope you both have a great rest of your day and upcoming weekend. And for viewers and listeners to learn more or to potentially inquire, just inquire about anything we talked about today, Philip and Florabel, they can go to Sasam Immigration. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we still run under Sesam Immigration. The related webpage is that. Of course, all the information is on the Envoy platform because we're a proud member now of the Envoy Global Network. And and that should be the first point of contact when it comes to online presence. And very soon our webpage will be moved into that as well.
Sounds great. Well, thank you both for your time today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much,
Take
Eric.
care.
Have a good one.